And good evening, my friends. So welcome back to Monday. It is time for it's Drew's Day. Drew's Day. We are back. We are here on Monday. And many things have happened since last week. This is the thing. So welcome one and welcome all. You know, some of you people getting the hat pin. You were all wrong. I have the Saturn in a cup of tea hat pin tonight. Is it coffee? Well, the problem is it's actually green, slightly green. So it's obviously I've got a slightly transparent Saturn in a cup, and I have had a haircut. Oh, look at that! Winnie 1974 spotted it. The first most important piece of news already. I have. Actually, I don't think I can. Yeah, it's what colour is it? Of course, I can't see it now because it's on my head. I can't take my eyes out and have a look on top of my head, which would be pretty horrific. Well, close it in. There we go. Where's the camera? There we go. It is Saturn in the cup of tea, but I think the Saturn has got a slightly odd colour to it. It appears transparent on the green screen. So yes, I am trimmed for speed. Look at this. Look, I am neat. I am tidy. I'm probably about 2 stone lighter. Not. I must admit, I can't remember being so glad to have had a haircut in my entire life. It was really quite a big deal when I got. Yes, I'm having a haircut. It's like, forget going to Alton Towers or Disneyland. No, this was proper excitement. This is excitement level 8. This was. I'm having a haircut. And everyone was like, "Oh, you're having a haircut! Wow!" It's like, and everyone was like, "Oh, you're having a haircut! Oh, I'm so jealous." So I've had a haircut. So that was a big thing. That was a big thing. So that's quite good. I've had this hair for years, and I'm younger than you, Drew, says Rob. Well, I'm of the opinion that hair is one of those things. I don't know. I mean, is hair one of those things that evolutionarily we're going to get rid of in the next few 100,000 years? Because I don't really see the point of it anymore. And there's so much of our bodies effectively don't have any hair on them. It just seems odd that it's concentrated in small patches. It's a very irritating thing to be bothering about. It's far more logical just to not have any hair at all, I think. Because we've invented clothes and hats. This hair business, and of course, as you get older, your hair starts to do strange things. Now, my hair used to be, back in the ancient mists of time, it used to be black. So you can see what's left of it on my eyebrows. That's my original colour of hair, and it is alas no longer black. Yeah, it has this sort of silver sheen to it, shall we say, and. Moustache is just eyebrows for your mouth. And obviously mine has receded back quite a long way, which is it's getting very, 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 very thin on top to the point in which it just looks a bit ridiculous. So and one of the reasons for wearing a hat, so you look a little bit more more respectable. But also, actually, it's quite useful. I wear a hat mostly because of the sun, which obviously doesn't apply at the moment because I'm inside, and the sun has in fact set. So I don't really have an excuse for wearing a hat. But I like wearing a hat. It's comfortable. It's just one of those things. My current lockdown here resembles the veritable mop I had as a teenager. Yeah, so it's I didn't have, my hair was sprouting around the sides and it was getting in front of my ears and it's just horrible. The space, you may be able to hear the space birds. They're quite chirpy at this time of the year. I think it's spring and they kind of got back into their whatever they do. And I must admit, I found an app. I don't know if this works in the entire world, but I found an app, a birdsong app where you can record the bird song and it samples it and it sends it off to the internet and tells you, that's a robin or that's a sparrowhawk or something. It's like, hey, this is very, very cool. Now I can actually learn what these birds are that's sitting in my tree. I did take a sample of it. Unfortunately, it didn't come back with space birds. Came back with something else. I was like, no, you're wrong. It's a space bird. Definitely a space bird. A hat for the sun. Yes, I mean, it has been sunny for the last couple of weeks actually here in the UK. So, and almost warm enough to sort of go out without a coat on sometimes. But there we go. But I like wearing hats. Hats are not very common actually nowadays. Really, most people don't wear hats. I mean, you can see people wearing baseball caps. And the one thing that really freaks me out about baseball caps is the people who wear them sideways or with a cap bit at the back, and then squint into the distance with the sun in their eyes without having realised that the cap bit is there to stop you having to squint, which makes me funny. It's like, wear the hat the wrong way around, dude. Space birds sound like Norfolk country birds. I'm out and much. Yes, I suppose they're probably not. I mean, Norfolk isn't too far away from Kent, is it? So they're probably very similar, I would imagine. Does the app have a silly spinny thing? Silly spinny things. Oh dear, that was a bit of a tragedy. That was silly spinny things. No, we're not going to do silly spinny things tonight. We're going to avoid that entirely almost. Glenn is a cyclist. Now Glenn's actually not just a cyclist; he's a rather good one. He's got a very cool looking machine. I keep seeing on Facebook. Sunscreen and a helmet on my head is a must. Done on thermonuclear radiation. Yes, it's just irritating to have a thermonuclear device and, up in the sky, isn't it? Really, really bad. Do I keep the hat on while eating waffles, which is my favourite flavour? No, I don't keep I generally don't have the hat on indoors, to be honest. It's become a bit of a thing. I first started wearing it, probably more than 10 years ago. Just because I liked wearing hats, and nobody else was wearing hats. And I thought, I fancy wearing a hat. And I've got used to wearing a hat. And then I took it along to conventions, and it sort of became a bit of a thing for my streams. And then it was just like, okay, well, I'm wearing a hat now. Because people don't recognise me if I haven't got my hat on. So, where's Drew? Oh, he's no, nobody's seen him. That guy with the hat, there he is, yay. Does my wife make you take the hat off after? No, the hat goes off. Yeah, the hat goes off post stream. Yes, it's a stream thing. I do wear a hat out and about though, generally, because I think I mentioned it before. My dad actually died of skin cancer, which is not a particularly nice way to go, I'm afraid. And that was brought on. It was melanoma, which is caused by solar radiation. So the fact that I'm thinning, shall we say, rather dramatically on top. In fact, I've gone bald and have a receding hairline that has receded way up the top of my head. Just seems to be a sensible thing. I think, well, I'm just, I like sunlight. I'm not a vampire, but it seems only reasonable to take precautions. So let's see the haircut. Okay, well, here we go. I don't know, some of you may not have seen me without my hat. This is a guy. So here we go. This is what I look like with Sans hat. There we go. So look, I'm quite neat and quite tidy. So there we go. There we go. That's the hat. That's without the hat. A bit of a stream reveal there. How about that? But I prefer wearing the hat. And the hat is my thing on stream. So there we go. There we go. Dun, 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 dun. Who is that? Who is that strange guy who just appeared? Yeah, so that's not right, is it? Yeah. And I don't know. I just find it comfortable. I like wearing a hat. I like the weight on my head. I suppose you just get used to things. Bring Drew back. Yeah, who's that strange guy? So a haircut was a big deal this week, and I must admit I do wear sunglasses, not because I particularly need to wear sunglasses, but cutting down the radiation and stuff sort of just does appeal to me a little bit. But there we go. So thermonuclear protection, that's kind of what it is. Yeah, a bit of sunscreen, and I like being out. See, I'm a big fan of the sun, but I don't really like the heat. So today in the UK it was about sort of 18, 19, 20 degrees Celsius, which is totally warm enough for me. I don't like it any hotter than that because I can't do anything. Once it gets beyond about 25, I'm like, I start melting. I don't like the temperature that high. I'm much happier in the cold. I think that's the Canadian genes coming through. They're just used to colder weathers. So yeah. Anyway, so a haircut. I've been trimmed for speed, which has been excellent. So I was rather pleased with that. That was good. The other thing, of course, I got this Monday stream I only just have caught up on is last week I became a Twitch partner, which I was like, yay! I became a Twitch partner. I had to get my son to explain what that was, and he went, "That's actually quite good, Dad. To the right, there's, I'm actually quite impressed, and to be slightly, slightly impressive to your teenage son. Any father will appreciate this. Is actually quite a big deal. He's like, oh, that's actually, Dad, you've got some proper internet points. So I haven't quite figured out what I'm supposed to do with it now. I am a Twitch partner, but I think it just gives you some technical stuff that you can do, and some more emotes. It's just like, yay! And I must admit, I was looking online, looking at a few other Twitch streamers who had made partner, and their screens are full of stuff. And there's banners spinning across the top, and there's things popping up and going, wee, zing, zing, zing on the screen. And I was like, that's not really me. I mean, I like having the chat window. Where is it? There, that way. There. I can't point backwards. It's there. No, it's there. There's the chat window. That bit I can do. That kind of makes sense. But yeah, well, these spinny things. A, I don't know how to do them, which is actually probably the biggest reason they're not on the screen. But B, the reason that I'm actually going for is they would distract from the content I'm providing, and would pose a distraction to my viewers. It'd be, less is more. Which is good, because less is all you're going to get. Because I don't know how to do any of that clever stuff on screen. I haven't really got time for that. I mean, it's just me waffling on anyway. So what you see is what you get. WYSIWYG, as we would have said in the 90s. Is it the 90s? WYSIWYG. But there we go. So Chair 99 hasn't got there yet. Kids are still under 5, so I'm still the hero. Yes. So no. When you have teenage children, you have to start. You have to actually do something pretty darned impressive to actually even get them to glance up. But when I said I became a Twitch partner, my 17-year-old was like, it's like, I've done a thing. Definitely done a thing. This is good. So there we go. So that was good. So we need to the Dead Cowboy, yes, and Sleepy Pete's. The Cowboy is quite funny. So in Elite Dangerous, we won't talk about much about Elite Dangerous, but that is worth a mention. There's this cowboy stood up in Elite Dangerous, which I'm assuming is some sort of alpha sort of Easter eggy type thing. Whereas every so often you go to a crash site where there's a ship, you'll find this poor chap sprawled on the ground, dead presumably, but wearing a cowboy hat, rather reminiscent, shall I say, of the one that your certain interlocutor at the moment is wearing. Although he's wearing some ungodly hot pants, which look very, very wrong indeed. And he's sprawled on the ground in a near vacuum, because obviously it's a thin atmosphere. And a few people have made the connection that there's a slight passing resemblance between this poor dead space cowboy dude and a certain partner Twitch streamer of recent acquaintance. So I don't think it's got anything to do with me at all. Just a few people have been sending me pictures saying, Drew, why are you dead in Elite Dangerous? So Blue Ganymede, that's exactly what I said to FDev. I just sent them a picture saying, is this a subtle hint, guys? I haven't had an answer to that. Low Earth Orbit says, I thought of you immediately when I saw the Space Cowboy. Commander Rezab, hello, 07, and so on. Anyway, lovely to see you all on the stream. So yes, the Space Cowboy. I haven't actually seen the Space Cowboy myself. I haven't been lucky enough to get one of the POIs that pops up. But plenty of people have been sending me pictures. And apparently it's slightly bugged, and occasionally you get more than one Space Cowboy turning up at the same time. But they're both dead. So whether it's got anything to do with me, I have no idea. But the Space Cowboy is the thing, and that's all closely tied with the spinny whirly thing that we're not going to talk about. But so there we go. Now, maybe FDev is telling us something with that. Stop caring about the law. So maybe otherwise the Space Cowboy gets it. Yeah. Space Cowboys was a film. We're quite right with Clint Eastwood. I remember right there. David Braben's just messing. Yeah, he probably is. Let's put Drew in and kill him. Thanks. So I've been quipping back with rumours of my death have been greatly exaggerated and things like that, which has been quite good fun. So yeah, Space Cowboys are a thing. Now the other thing we must do. Was it George Peppard? Cowboys? No, that was Cowboy. Yeah, hang on. There's Cowboys and Aliens, but wasn't there Space Cowboys with the one where they end up going to the moon, or one of them ends up on the moon? It's just some old guys. I can't remember what is that. Space Cowboys. There's Cowboys versus Aliens. That's a different film. I'm just trying to remember now. I'm thinking of one. I'm sure it was Clint Eastwood and basically three old guys have to go into space. I can't remember what the premise was, but they have to go into space and rescue something or fix something. And one of them jets off to the moon. There we are. Space Cowboys. Commander O'Connor's found it. Space Cowboys is a 2000 American adventure. Clint Eastwood, Tommy Lee Jones. That's it. Donald Sutherland. James Garner's for older ex-test pilots who are sent to space to repair an old Soviet. That's right. They have to repair an old Soviet satellite because they're the only ones who know how it works. That's right. And Cowboys versus Aliens is Harrison Ford and somebody else. I can't remember. George Peppard. Yeah, no, that's Battle Beyond the Stars. He's Hannibal from the A-Team, isn't he, George Peppard? Battle Beyond the Stars. Now there's a film. How many of you seen that? That's a proper classic B-movie sort of science fiction show. That was. Anyway, so that's good. So right. For next week, as Glenn. Where's Glenn? He's here. Commander Terraphobia. Daniel Craig. There we go. That's right. That's it. Next week is the 1-year anniversary of the publication. I think I'm right. Is it the paperback version of 9 Streams of Consciousness? Is it really a year? That's terrifying. The entire year has gone past. I think it's the year anniversary of 9 Streams of Consciousness, which is the anthology book that we published here on this very stream. So next week's stream, the stream hasn't finished. I'm giving you an advance warning. That's how these things work, okay? So next week we will do we'll do a stream devoted to 9 Streams of Consciousness. I'll see if I can get some of the old crew back who contributed to it, so that you can find out a little bit more about what you did and all those sort of things. Because that was what that actually was, is where this particular stream sort of started, which was a sort of, let's actually try and write a book. It's extremely ambitious. Sometimes I think we bit off a little bit more than we could chew, but we did get there in the end. We actually wrote, edited, put together, fixed, twiggled, published, and did stuff to make a book on Amazon, which is still there, which you can still go and get. So it's a paper anniversary for 9 Streams of Consciousness. So I think next week it would be worth us having a good look at that process and revisiting it, and getting a few people's thoughts on what that feels like after a year of having doing that sort of stuff. So yes, the 9 Streams of Consciousness. And the other thing I've got to do before next week, for all the authors of 9 Streams of Consciousness, is total up all the amazing amounts of dosh that we've earned in that year of publishing. No spoilers, not a great amount, but it is there, okay. And so I need to send out some royalty statements to all the authors, and advise them all. So I'll get that done as well. So and we'll figure out how we're going to pay people in lots and lots of different countries all across the world, and see how that goes. But yeah, we did a thing. We published a book, which is not everyone can say that. But it was a lot of hard work. I think we would definitely agree with that sort of stuff. So that would be next week's stream. Glenn is now doing a shameless link. An interstellar object. So actually we had fun here, because we didn't just write a book. So it was an anthology of short stories. So there were 9 authors. I think I'm right. Yes, 9 Streams of Consciousness. 9 authors who wrote in total altogether 15 stories, but they were all linked by a common piece of lore. What a good idea, hey? Having a piece of lore that's common to all stories. What a good idea. Why don't other things do that? So we actually worked on the lore first. So we worked out the timeline of the event. So we all wrote in the same universe, but in different time zones. So I think I was near the beginning of the timeline, and then various other people sort of took sections of the timeline and wrote stories in those kind of eras, and we spanned several thousand years. And so the 9 Streams of Consciousness actually is the history of a piece of lore in the universe, and the premise basically is that there's this object hurtling towards Earth, and we've got to get off it, and then we end up going somewhere else. Dun, dun, dun. So there we go. So so lore, proper lore that works and is consistent is useful, and you can refer to it to guide yourself in future endeavours. What a good idea, eh? Slightly tongue-in-cheek. My story mine's the first in the book, isn't it? That's right, yes. And we had a foreword by none other than Dave Hughes, the original Elite Lore Master, who did so much work on the original Elite timeline prior to Elite Dangerous, believe it or not. So that's quite good stuff. So that's good. Now, tonight, I was going to potentially attempt to go back onto the topic that I banned last week, but I was conscious how well last week's stream went. So for those of you who are new to this stream, or those of you who've been around for a while and might have questions just to ask. Now, I cannot promise to answer them, all right? Because although I am an author and I'm a writer, and there are several other authors and writers on the stream as well. I've published 9 books, I think. So I've got a reasonable amount of experience about writing and publishing and all that other kind of stuff that goes with it, and everything else that goes with it. And I'm very, very keen for those of you who are going, I'd love to write a book, but I don't know what to do. I don't know how to start, or I've got an idea, but how do I develop it, and all those sort of things. And a few of those questions came out last week, kind of just because of the way things happened. So I thought this evening, rather than having a plan per se, because we can always get back to other plans, we could have a little bit of a kind of free for all. So if you have a question about, it can be about my books, or it can be about books in general. I don't mind answering a few Elite Dangerousy ones if they're sort of writing flavoured, if that makes sense. We're not talking about spinny things, because that's got nothing to do with writing at all. But if you've got questions about putting a book, creating a book from scratch, or a short story, or things that you've tried that haven't worked, maybe you need some help, anything like that, then chuck it in the chat, and we'll have a wade through them and see what comes out the other side. And if there aren't enough questions, then I'll waffle on about something else. And if there are lots of questions, we'll sort of maybe store them up and see how we go. So chuck them in the chat and see how it goes. One thing I am actually working on, and I'm hoping to get done by this week, this is my target, is the first draft of Doomdark's Revenge at last. It's been taking quite a long time in the works, actually, and I've got to get. I've just told myself, you've got to finish this at the end of April. I've self-imposed a deadline to get my sort of backside in gear. So my target is this week. Doomdark's Revenge first draft will be complete, and then I can start going through it with doing editing. So that'd be good. Are you familiar with the concept of a leitmotif in music, the signature musical identity of a character in fiction, usually opera? I suppose I'm tangentially aware of it. Is there a kind of literary equivalent? Equivalent to a leitmotif? So, if I'm right here, a leitmotif is like a musical phrase that is associated with maybe a character in an opera, or Star Wars does it, doesn't it? I mean, you've got very clear in the original Star Wars the sort of motif for Leia and one for Luke, and the Empire, that sort of stuff. Bum 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 bum. Peter and the Wolf. That's another one, obviously, with the classic orchestra with the different things. Is that a leitmotif? If it is, then yes, I suppose. In a literary idea, you would have. I suppose it might come out in the way you describe a character, or it might come out with the mannerisms of a character. So you know who you're dealing with here. So, for example, you can sometimes play around with the fact that you would, in general books, you would be very clear to the reader who is talking, so that the reader can go, oh, it's so and so, or it's so and so, and it's nice and clear to the reader. Sometimes you want to keep that a mystery, so you might have a voice in the background saying something important, and the reader's going, oh, who's talking? Who's talking? And then you might just drop in something that you previously established. So, to take an example from one of my books, one of the things I've done is there's a girl, Kiri, who always has a black glove on one hand because her hand was maimed at some point in the past. And you can sort of, you see her occasionally go into the story kind of almost in silhouette. We're not sure who it is, and then the glove appears in the description, and everyone goes, I know who it is now. So that is sort of a mechanism that you can use, and it just strengthens the kind of, hang on, who's talking here? So you're trying to grab the reader's interest a bit and focus them in on what's actually being said. And you'll find readers tend to focus more on the dialogue in those scenarios, because okay, I need to pay attention to the dialogue here to figure out who it is who's actually talking. If you can use that skillfully, it can be quite a good thing for raising tension. So good. A111 Sonny Smith says, do you think there are fads that publishers look for? This is a video game example, but Steve Sinclair from Digital Extremes talks a lot about how hard it was to get publisher support for Warframe because fantasy was more popular than sci-fi. Definitely there are fads. Definitely are fads. They come and go. I mean, in the 1990s, if you were trying to publish anything other than a wizard story, you had no chance at all. And before that, I think it was vampires. There are really strong fads. And I think even in games publishing has come across this as well. If you and books are quite similar to God. If you write a story which follows the popular thing, then you're kind of in with the publishers then, because they're basically saying, okay, so and so's had a success with, let's say a story about a young wizard. We need more stories about young wizards. Quick, everybody, all get those writers to write some stuff about young wizards. And if you happen to be writing a story about young wizards at the time, the chances are that your publisher, a publisher may be fairly sympathetic to your book. Particularly if it's a series, and particularly if they can get it out there quickly with some very similar sort of artwork. Those sort of things are quite common. They quickly run their course. And sometimes you can be on the leading edge of that fad, and sometimes you can be on the tailing edge. Or we have people like me who completely ignore fads and write whatever the heck they like, which publishers don't generally like. So those sort of things, but fads definitely exist. Absolutely, they do. Man vs. Pixels. Let's say you've written a book, all finished. You're not published author with no record. What next? Okay, so you've got various choices. You kind of got three choices really. One, you can go right. I want to traditionally publish this. And the way to do that is you have to buy a book first. I'll show you the book you need to buy. I've got a copy. I've got the old copy here. I haven't bought a recent one. This is the Bible. Okay, if you want to write a book, this is it. Okay, so you need a copy of this. And it's got. This is the old one. I have had this for ages. I haven't bought a new one yet because it's like 15 quid. I'm buying a book, especially one that size. 15 quid every year. But it's actually quite a good book. So this book, The Writers and Artists Yearbook, which actually is an exercise in putting apostrophes in the right place, is basically crammed full of lots and lots of useful advice, and all the literary agents. There's reams of them. Okay, so this is a UK version, UK and Ireland version. I mean, you will be able to find one that's specific to your country. It may not be called the Writers and Artists Yearbook, but there'll be something like this for every country that you're in. This contains all of the people who do professional publishing and agents in the world, basically. And that is literally just the UK one. I imagine the American one must be enormous. The traditional way to get published is to find yourself an agent. An agent will basically take your book and go, right, Mr. Publisher, I found this amazing book written by this amazing guy. It's a fantastic story. It's this, and this. We can make this much money out of it. You should make him an offer. And the agent's job is to sell your book to the publisher. And so the publisher goes, yes, let's have a copy of this. They publish it, and you and the agent make some money. That's traditional publishing. Now, the problem being is that there are thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of writers who would like to be traditionally published. A handful of publishers and a handful and a bit more agents who sit between the writers and the publishers. And most of the agents, most of the time, aren't taking any new submissions because they're busy dealing with the stuff that they've already got. And the publishers don't like risk, okay? So they don't like publishing anything that's not already kind of got a pre-made audience for it. So when you're starting off as a new writer, why should an agent pay any attention to you? And B, why should that agent try and represent your book to a traditional publisher? Those are the questions you've got to answer. Wading through this will help you clarify that answer, okay? But that's the thing. So that's traditional publishing. The other choice, of course, is what we do with 9 Streams of Consciousness, which is to simply self-publish it yourself. You can put it onto Amazon yourself. All the tools are there to exist. You can take your Word document that you've created, You can edit it. You need to do some tweaks to it and muck about with it, which is a bit tedious, but you can get there. And you can put it onto Amazon. You can upload the cover art. You can press the go button, and your book exists. It's a thing. Okay, you can both buy. You can tell people about it. Some people in the literary world are very sniffy about that. Go, well, self-publishing is not proper publishing. You need to be traditionally published, otherwise it's just not worth doing. All that sort of stuff. Well, that's complete nonsense, right? If a published book is a book that someone's bought and gone, there, it's a book, I bought it, I enjoyed that, and hopefully left you a review if they're very nice. So that's self-publishing. Now, the barrier to entry for self-publishing is much, much lower. The problem with self-publishing is that because anyone can do it, anyone and everyone does do it, which means you are adrift in a sea of other material, and your hardest task actually is not so much necessarily writing the book. It's distinguishing yourself from everybody else who's out there trying to do the same thing. That's the hard part. Okay, trying to get some eyeballs on the thing that you've actually created. So that's the thing. The third one, which might be an easier route, particularly in the UK, is an independent publisher. So these are smaller publishers who will publish niche things or smaller things, possibly take risks that a bigger publisher won't, but they don't have the marketing budgets and things that you would expect from a big publisher. So they will probably help you do editing, however, which is a useful thing, and those kind of things, and they may be able to do limited print runs and those sort of things. Those are the three kind of main ways to get your book to exist, if that makes sense. So I hope that that one. So that was Man vs. Pixel. So there we go. Glenn Glenn's asking a question to Man vs. Pixels. Okay, that's good. So keep helping each other out in the chat as well. JL998 has a question. Related to my recent efforts, how do you guys go about making the ebook for 9 Streams of Consciousness? Any tips and tricks? Okay, so the ebook, the easiest way to do it is simply to use Amazon tools. Okay, Amazon tools have come on a long way in the last few years. In the olden days, what you had to do is you had to extract the text only from your Word document, format it as HTML and upload that, because effectively an ebook format underneath all the sort of gubbins is actually HTML of a type, and you have to, but it's quite strict HTML that you can only do certain things with. That's basically what an ebook is. It's sort of a form of hypertext. And in the olden days, you had to write the hypertext manually, which was a real pain. But nowadays, Amazon will take your Word document and go zip. There you go. The only thing you have to do is Amazon have a series of templates that you have to download, and you have to fit your book into the template and then upload it again into Amazon site and then check that it formats properly. And that takes a few iterations because it usually goes a bit screwy sometimes. Things that are problematic, putting images and things and different fonts inside there, all those sort of things can be quite tricky. Headers and footers and page numbering and page spacing and those sort of things. The template does most of it for you, but you still need to check it. But Amazon's publishing services are very, very good nowadays. It's much easier than it used to be. So that's quite good. And there we go. Alan's done it. He's published his NaNoWriMo as a novel very easily. So that's quite good. Yeah, and then when you want to format it for print, that's another thing. Okay, so unfortunately you can't go, I've done the ebook, we'll just do the print version. No, not at the moment. Two separate things, okay? Because ebooks, obviously, your ebook reader, I haven't got my Kindle here with me, but you can change the font size, okay, which completely changes the page numbering, which is dynamic in an ebook. In a printed book, it's not dynamic, okay? So you, the person creating the book, has to decide how big the font should be and where the pages fall and all those kind of things. And there's lots of little bits and pieces in there which are a bit irritating. Like chapters normally will start on a trailing page, not on a first page, and there's little things like that that you need to kind of play around with. So there's lots of little bits and pieces there. But as you do it, you'll figure it out. But that's the difference. If you're doing a self-publishing, you have to do all that stuff yourself. And the quality of what you get out is obviously equivalent to the amount of time you put in. Whereas if you are published by somebody else, either by the agent, traditional publisher route, or directly with an independent publisher, they will do that bit for you, okay? but they take a cut of your sales in doing so. So there's no free ride. So I find it, I must admit, I find it, I don't mind self-publishing at all. I don't see anything wrong with it. But it's sometimes nice to have, say, there you go, there's the document, you go turn it into a book. It's much easier. So those sort of things. There's lots and lots of different ways, lots of different tools. Calibra is a great tool for making ebooks. And I'd definitely recommend ebooks as a starting place, because you can go straight from a Word document to an ebook pretty quickly. Low Earth Orbit in music, we've already embraced self-publishing, so that's good. So there is a bit, in some places there's an attitude about publishing. Some people don't consider that you've actually published a book unless you've done it the traditional way, which I think is very silly, because that's like saying you haven't driven a car until you've driven it the traditional way. Well, what's the traditional way? And why should it stay the same? It doesn't make any sense. So, you've got to embrace the new technology and reach people. And that's one of the reasons why I do these Twitch streams. Is actually say, well, people are, if somebody's bought one of my books and enjoyed it, here's an opportunity for them to come back and talk to the author about the thing that they enjoyed. Why wouldn't you want to do that as an author? And some people say, no, I just want to write a book and you have to be rich and famous. That's it. It's like, if you write a story, surely you want to interact with the people who read your story. I don't know, maybe that's just me, but there we go. Bit weird. So there we go. Being a small fish in a big pond, that is your biggest problem nowadays, okay? Because the entry to writing books and publishing books has kind of been, so I suppose, democratized. Because everybody's doing it, there are an awful lot of books out there. I mean, there must be millions and millions and millions of them published every year. So standing out amidst that is tricky. Now, there's a few little things that I can recommend that I've done which help. If you've got a memorable name, and I'm blessed with a memorable name, okay? The only other Drew Wagar in the world has been murdered. So I am he. There can be only one, right? So I've got a memorable name out of the stocks. Now, if you happen to be called John Smith, that's not going to help you, okay? So a pen name may serve you well to distinguish yourself, okay? Also, when you're coming up with the title of your book, if you decide I'm going to call this The Epic Legacy or something like that, okay, do a search for books called Legacy on Amazon. You'll get about 6 billion responses, okay? That's not a good way for you to distinguish your book. You need to come up with probably a pen name nowadays, I suspect, would be quite useful, and a title that doesn't result in billions and billions of hits on other platforms. You've got to have a think about that now, because distinguishing yourself is a big deal, and if you're not the sort of person who likes doing marketing, you're going to struggle, because you need to be visible. You need to be a social animal to a degree. You need to be on Twitter. You need to be on social media, because people will go to those places to look up stuff about the book. Is there any reviews for this thing? All of those things, and they all need constant attention, and it's quite hard work. So writing the book and getting it out there is a thing for sure, but actually getting people to notice that it's there and continuing to get people to notice it's there, that's a thing as well, and that's a lot of hard work. The whole marketing of getting awareness of the thing that you're doing is a big problem, okay? It's inevitable, and you've just got to keep plugging at it. Have I heard of Wattpad? Yes, I have. I haven't really played around with it, it's mostly, for me, it's lack of time. So I have heard of it, but it's not something I'm really investigating. I understand it allows you to stick chapters up at a time, and then people will follow the story from there, because they're sort of reading it in small segments. I think that's right. So that's quite good. Alan's written on Wattpad as well. Sorry, I'm a bit behind on the chat. I've paused it and I'm scrolling up, so I will get to your questions as I scroll down. And Steve Shaw is here. Yay! That's great. Stick shift, yes, stick shift for traditional car driving. To be honest, I would agree with that. Some says, yeah, you haven't driven properly until you've driven a stick shift. But so there we go. Has Wattpad changed? I don't know. I haven't tried Wattpad, but I have heard of it. And musicians are also used to creating artists. So if you're, I mean, I dabble with music, but I wouldn't say I was a musician. But if you want to come up with the name of a band for yourself, whether it's contemporary music or classical music, you need to have something memorable. You need to be something that people go, oh, those guys, yeah. And as an author, I think you've got the same thing. Hopefully, for those of you who've been following me for a while, the fact that Drew Wagar as dare I say it, as a brand, is a bit of is in a small way is a thing. Okay, so if you get a Drew Wagar book, you know what you're in for. It's going to be a sort of character-based story with a bunch of memorable characters, action adventure, probably not too sophisticated, but a bit of a twisty plot, lots of emotion, gets resolved in the end, and you've had a nice satisfying read, and boom, off we go to the next one. Okay, I am not trying to win a literary prize. That's not what Drew Wagar's all about. Drew Wagar's about escapism, fun, adventure, and dare I say it, good old-fashioned storytelling. That's my sort of brand, as it were, and I concentrate on fantasy and science fiction because that's what I like to write about. I have written one contemporary novel which I did enjoy doing, but I'm unlikely to do another one because it's just not something that I'm particularly good at. I don't do historical fantasy because that's not me. I don't do historical fiction because that's not me. I don't do crime or horror because that's not me. So what do I do? Well, I do science fiction and fantasy. That's what I like. I've always liked. That's what I like writing. And I have a style of writing which is mine. And if you like that, then you'll probably enjoy the next book regardless of the topic, because it's going to be the similar sort of thing. That's the sort of stuff I write. So figure out the. Glenn's going to make his surname Drew Wagar. So there we go. Six String. Did I miss this question there? Sorry, let me just scroll up. I have an interest in writing, says Six String. I think I have solid idea for a sci-fi story, but I'm unsure of how to start. I've heard that I should just write down what comes to mind and keep expanding on it. Is this a good idea? I can't really figure out how to start the story out. Sometimes you can't start at the beginning. Okay, I usually don't, to be frank. What I tend to do, as I think I've mentioned on the stream before, is I will write a scene that I'm interested in. Okay, so if I've got a vague story idea, maybe set on a spaceship, or some fantasy land where something's happening. Maybe a volcano's gone off or something. For reasons. It doesn't really matter what the background. I will write a scene. Maybe there's two people running away from a volcano, and I think that's just a cool thing. Okay, I'm going to write that scene, and I'll just start there. Okay, and I'll write that scene, and I'll make it work in my head. Oh yeah, this is good. Yeah, they're running away, and there's flaming stuff flying here, and there's chasms opening up in the ground, and one of them falls behind and dies, and the other two get away. Maybe, and I write that sort of scene. Okay. And I make it work as a small blob, a sort of small encapsulated piece of scene, and then I get to myself, okay, well, why would they be running away from a volcano? What happened? Why are they even on the edge of a volcano? Why are they being so stupid as to be up there? What happened to get them there? What happens afterwards? Who are these two people? How do they meet? What are they like? All those sort of questions, and then maybe from those, plots and things start to come out of it. For Shadewood, the first, my sci-fi series, one of the first scenes I wrote was actually near the beginning. Actually, no, it's not. Sorry, it's not. It's near the end of the first book when this girl Kiri, she's in a fight and she gets her hand badly wounded by a crossbow bolt, and I wrote that scene really early on, thinking I'm just gonna be really mean. I'm gonna maim this poor girl. And that's going to be a big elite motif, let's use that word, throughout the whole series, that she has to wear this black glove on one hand because she's got this horrible, horrible scar. And she doesn't, she's uncomfortable with it, doesn't want people to see it. And so I wrote that scene, which is at the end of book 1 of 4, really, really early on. I thought, I'm just going to put a scene. She's in a burning room, she gets maimed, and she has to escape. And then, then I was asking the question. Well, okay, who is this girl? Why is she in a burning room? And why has she just had a crossbow bolt go straight through her palm of her hand? What could possibly have led up to that? And then the rest of it slowly started sort of percolating out for that. So that's how I do it. That may work for you. Some people, religiously plot from beginning to end. Other people just write and see what happens, and they stick it all together and hope for the best. There's no right or wrong answer. It's whatever works for you to keep getting pen on paper or words on the screen. What I would say though is keep writing. Okay, that's one thing I always say to everybody is, even if it's rubbish, which a lot of the time it will be, so don't feel that you should be getting hugely great quality stuff out all the time. I don't. Hopefully the books I end up with are readable, but a lot of the stuff I write day to day, I look at it and go, that's just that, I've just got to get it done out of my head in some sort of way, and then I can go back and refine it a bit. Sometimes I'm writing going, no, this is twee, this is horrible, this is ghastly, but I've just got to get past it. Okay, do keep writing. Low Earth Orbit, actually, if your music may say something similar here, I don't know, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but if you want to be a great violinist or a great pianist, or any musical instruments, you don't wake up one morning and go, right, today I will be a great violinist. You can't do that. You can be on a path to become a great violinist, but what lies between you and the decision to start and the end product of being a great violinist is an awful lot of practice and hard work. Okay. And a lot of boring, repetitive, repeating stuff and doing it again, learning how it went wrong, doing it again, learning how it went wrong, doing it again. It's a real journey. Okay, so you can't wake up one morning and go, right, I'm going to be a brilliant novelist. You just can't do that. Okay, you have to practice. And writing is like any other skill. You don't just get good at it from day one. You just don't. Okay, you will make some really bad errors, and the early stuff that you write will be, by the standards of your later work, dreadful. Okay, you'll notice this the more you write. That's not a bad thing. Okay, so I've got some of the early stuff I wrote, and it is truly dreadful. And I keep it to remind myself of, well, I'm not there anymore, I'm over here, and I can write much better now. But at the time I thought it was brilliant, and of course everybody does, but there's work to be done. Okay, if you want to be a good writer, you have to put in the hours. It's not just something going, yes, I'm going to be awesome. That doesn't work like that. Okay, you've got to put in some graft, and sometimes that will be staring at the screen going, I haven't got any ideas, and sometimes it will go, yes, I'm having a great day, and it's like 10,000 words, and you're brilliant. But that's rare, to be honest. But if you can knock out a few hundred words a day, you're doing all right. Okay, but always keep writing, because it keeps the sort of the lubrication of those things kind of moving. So that's good. Hopefully that helps. Way too many writers these days, new ways, new ideas. I know, there's too many of them. The thing is, there's writers and writers. Okay, now there's a thing that people have said that everybody's got one book in them. I don't know if that's true, because I don't think everybody has. To be a writer, and probably a musician, there's probably a lot of similarities with musicians, actually. You've got to want to do it. Okay. Now, disabuse you of any notions of getting rich. Okay. Writing is not the way to do it unless you're incredibly lucky. Okay. The smallest fraction of 1% of writers actually go on to make a decent living out of writing. Okay. It is not a path to fame and glory. At least it's not for the vast majority of anybody who takes it up. You've got to write because you like writing. Okay, and there's something in you that's demanding that you tell this story for some reason. The only reason I'm being a bit older now. I'm in a lucky position. I've had a reasonable career, which has put me in a position where I can afford to do writing, and not worry too much about the day job. Now that's a luxury that I have now because of the virtue of where I've got to. Not everybody's in that position, and I really wouldn't recommend writing as a career unless you know an awful lot about it and you've got some inroads into the world. Your chances of success, I doubt, are very good. I'm afraid. Just the sheer numbers are against you. Because of the number of people trying to do it. And it's not easy. Okay, it's not easy. I mean, you can put all your blood and sweat and tears into a book, and then nobody likes it, even though it's good. Sometimes that happens. So all of those sort of things are kind of stacked against you. So write because you love writing. Okay, play music because you love playing music. Is a better thing. Don't try and turn it into I'm going to be the next J.K. Rowling and earn millions. Very, very unlikely to happen. Okay, sorry to disabuse. If you're looking at this, I could be a writer and earn millions. It's very unlikely that you'll get. You might. It's like that whole famous YouTuber thing that you get when you ask kids what they want to be at school. I want to be a famous YouTuber. Well, okay, that's work as well. And maybe it's not necessarily a good idea to turn your hobby into a job, because you may take the joy out of it. So be careful of that balance. Glenn's going to go with a pen name of Righty McWriterface. No, that one's already been done, Glenn. You'll notice that I'm already called Writer McWriterface by certain people on the internet. So that's already been done. So that's quite funny. Dear. Prop BFC, I have an annoying habit of constantly editing my previous session's work, leaving less time to do what I plan to do. Now, I do that as well, and sometimes I use it as a bit of an excuse so that I don't have to write the next bit, because I'm a bit puzzled as necessary how I know how the next bit goes. But editing is never wasted. Okay, editing is never wasted. You can always, no matter what you're doing, you can always improve it a bit. You can tighten up a bit of dialogue, you can tweak the description, you can make the flow better, make the pacing better. Editing always helps a bit. Now the trick is when to stop. Okay, if your editing is stopping you from finishing the draft of the story, that's probably you probably need to get a handle on that. Because if you don't get to the end of the actual story, all the editing in the world isn't going to help you, because the story isn't finished. You must finish the story. Then you can edit to your heart's delight. Now, I personally don't like editing very much. I find it really, really annoying. After a time, I like to tweak it to a certain degree, but then I start getting bored and itchy, and I want to write again. But editing is essential, but you've got to find a balance to it. Okay. Generally, writing the story is probably, maybe the first draft is probably about 50% of the work in producing a book. The rest of that 50% is editing, typesetting, tweaking, redrafting, Okay, so you finish your first draft of the book. Congratulations, you're halfway there. If you're jumping into editing and it's at the cost of actually writing the story, you may want to reconsider that. I would think, and that possibly is going to be helpful to you. Lower thought, but there's musical writing. Just sit down and do it every day. Sometimes good things. And sometimes don't expect genius to happen. Writing and music, I imagine, are very it's similar in the sense that they're creative things, and sometimes creativity will happen spontaneously, and sometimes it won't, and you can't force it. I will sometimes have a situation where I think I need to write the scene, and I know roughly what I want to happen, but I just can't make the words happen. When I try and write it, and sometimes I just have to leave it, step away and go and do something else. And so sometimes it's quite nice to have multiple projects on the go, where you can say, okay, I'm stuck on that one, I just can't make it work, and go and work on something else. Don't force it, because you'll get frustrated and annoyed, and you don't want to get annoyed with your project. Okay, you just the creative stream is not happening on that one, I'm going to go and do something else for a bit. Try not to force it. That's important. Alan likes to start with a small spark, but then try and create a plan once I've written. So Alan and me, I think, share that in common. Actually, I like to muck around with a few scenes. So what I tend to do early on is I go, okay, there's sort of things I want to have in this novel. So for example, Shadewood, I wanted this tragic figure of this girl who'd had a really, really tough time and had difficult choices ahead of her. I thought that would be a fun thing to explore what happened. So, okay, who is she? What's she doing? Why did she get wounded? Why is she in a burning building? All those sort of things I could start playing. So I wrote those initial scenes, and I thought, okay, then I need to develop it. And then I started to develop it and go, what about that? And what about this? And what about that? And it led me off into this huge spider web of things, which I eventually had to document and turn into a sort of Bible for my series. That was all quite fun. That's the world building. That's the research. That's for me is huge fun. I like doing the world building. My danger is I get left in the world building. I go, I've got to write a book now, have I? But I've done all this world building, it's fantastic. But it's of no use unless you turn it into a book. Or use it to turn into a book. So, all those sort of things. So beware the world building. It's huge fun, and you can draw maps, and you can work out the specifications of this and that and everything, and all those kind of bits and pieces. But if you don't actually use it for anything, it's not so great. So the hard part is to keep going. Now, so editing and writing. So this will depend a little bit on who you are and how it works. Is I do tend to edit as I go, because I'll be writing something and go, that doesn't feel right. We would say that. So I edit it at that point. Some people can just literally write, and they say sometimes some of the stuff I'm writing is absolute rubbish, and I know it's rubbish, but I'll keep going because I've got the flow of the words are coming. And if they stop to edit, then they'll lose the momentum. I don't tend to find that's a problem for me. So what I will do is I will write and go, no, that's not what he would say. Actually, I don't like that description so much. I'm going to tweak that. So I will stop and fix and tweak a little bit as I'm going through. So my first draft is actually usually a bit better than the first draft because it's not got kind of crazy inconsistencies in it. But that's me. Some people will just literally blast on through it. So no, I've just got to get this stuff out of my head and onto the paper, even if it's rubbish in big quantities, because I'm just moving through the thing and it's coming out of me, and that's how it works. Writing is a very personal thing, so there is no right or wrong way to do that. It's whatever works for you. But do be prepared to go round it multiple times in order to fine tune it. So that's quite good. Thanks for the subscribe there, Six String. I do appreciate that. Hopefully that previous answer was useful. And do feel free to keep chucking questions in. That's kind of what this stream is about. This stream is really about, and we tend to discuss science fiction and fantasy, and sometimes we poke fun at science fiction and fantasy because there are some things to poke fun at, which is quite good. But it's mostly about it always was at its heart. It's kind of like, if you want to write, and I was writing stories as a kid. So my first story, I think I've actually got my first story, and I was about 12 or 13 when I started writing, and I've they're handwritten on paper, which is very 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 faded now with age. But I've got them. I started writing at the age of 12, 13, and I've never stopped. Okay, now it didn't become a useful thing of any decent quality until about 10 years ago, but there is at least a track record there. So what I'd like to encourage you guys who are watching, anybody who's watching, is if you fancy writing a story, you can, all right? You can do it. It is possible. It's within your power to do so. But it is hard work. You need to work at it. You need to stick at it. You need to have quite a lot of drive and dedication to get to the end. And when you get to the end of writing it, then you've got a whole stack load of more work to do to actually get it into a state where it's publishable and you can turn it into a book. But it can be done, all right? It can be done. So if you have an ambition to write a book, don't give up on it. It is possible. It is possible to do it. It is possible to do it. You can do it. And, this stream, if you like, it can be your sounding board as to what to do next. The first thing to do, though, is to write a story. You've got to write something, okay? Some people may jump straight into a full-length novel, but a full-length novel would be something approaching 100,000 words, okay? Maybe 70 to 100,000 words is about a full-length novel. If you write something that's about sort of 30 to 40,000, that would be a novella. And if you're writing something that's maybe 10 to 20,000 words, that would normally be classed as a short story, okay? So those are your sort of numbers, just so you're kind of aware. Those kind of things. Man vs. Pixels, the first draft of everything is shit, says Hemingway. Yes, that's about right. It is and it isn't. I don't quite agree with Hemingway because it depends on the writer. Some people will write at quite a decent level of quality on the first draft. Some people won't. Depends on the writer. One of the things you realise very quickly in this game is there are no rules, okay? And if there are any rules, you're quite safe to ignore them because there's no authority that basically says these are the rules, okay? My favourite quote about writing is there are 3 golden rules to writing, okay, that guarantee success. 3 golden rules to writing that guarantee success, but nobody knows what they are. And there aren't, okay? There's no guaranteed formula. You can go to a writing class. These things may help, they may not, okay? What you've got to have is a desire, okay? Something that will not sit what will not sit quietly inside you, that forces you almost onwards to say, I've got to write this story. And if you've got that, you will eventually write a book. There's no doubt about it. Now, you may have huge success, or you may have small success, or you may have no success, but you will probably write it down, okay? And then the trick then is to have the courage to go, no, actually, I want to go the whole hog here. I want to turn it into a book. It's something you can do. If you have that desire, you can do it, okay? It is a possible thing. So Glenn says, writers write. Well, they do. That's what it's about. And lower thought, it's not that business. Fail faster so you can start winning. So yeah, I've heard it said that, if you want to write a decent novel of 100,000 words, say, you've got to have written 1,000,000 words first in order to get enough skill and experience and critique under your belt to write the 100,000 words. Now, that sounds very discouraging, and it probably is. Your first novel may be the right length. It won't be the best thing that you've necessarily ever able to achieve, but you will have managed it, okay? You get better. It's like anything else. And, if my first novel, I remember finishing it thinking, wow, look at that. What a wonder that is. And now I look back at them thinking, oh my God, I didn't know that properly. Your criteria changes because you have more experience, you have more skill, and you have more ability the more you practice. So I get better because I write more. And that's not trying to, self-aggrandize myself. You will do the same thing. If the more you do something, the better you will get at it. That's just inevitable. Okay, as long as you take all advice from people who are reading, going, this needs tweaking, that needs tweaking, etc., etc., etc. So you will get better. So don't expect your first book to necessarily be brilliant, because it just can't be. You don't have that capability straight out of the blocks. But you can get better. That's the variations on Drew Wagar here as pen names. I'll have to set the IP police on you, I'm afraid, my friend. Glenn says, I feel like I need to start a new story because I feel a bit stuck on my current work. Now, I've had that. I've had motivation issues writing Doom Dark's Revenge simply because it's just felt like quite a long haul to get through. So I have got little side projects that I work on. I did my Elite Retribution one where I've been trying to do a live curated story inside the computer game Elite Dangerous. That was a bit of a diversion for me to get creative juices working in different places. So those sort of things are, if you're getting stuck somewhere, by all means go and give yourself permission to go and do something else, because then you might come back to, I've just had a really, really good idea. Sometimes I let my subconscious, I find you mustn't force it. Okay, if you try and force creativity, it just switches off. So if I'm stuck on a scene, I will quite often go, you know what, I'm stuck on that scene. And I'll go, right, subconscious, you figure that out while I'm busy doing conscious stuff. And quite a lot of the time I find, a few days later, suddenly something will come back into my head. And it's almost like my subconscious has gone, right, yes, we'll work on that, Drew, while you're doing conscious stuff. We'll churn away on that for a bit, and then suddenly it pops back into my conscious mind. I go, wow, what a great answer. That's a really good way of dealing with that particular problem. So the power of your subconscious, don't underestimate it, okay? So sometimes you can dump a problem with your story. I can't figure out how to fix this plot, can't figure out this character motivation, how to get it across. Sometimes don't try and solve it. Leave it kind of in your unconscious mind, and sometimes it comes back. Which is a bit weird, but it does work. At least it works for me. So there. So there we go. JL1988, I had to stop myself from going down a world-building rabbit hole. Yeah, you've got to be a bit careful because you can get carried away and never emerge from that. I made a planetary map and named all the countries, and I thought I could write a fantasy series based there. And at that point, I had to rein myself in. So yeah, I like maps. I do draw maps, and I find maps are quite a good way of plotting out where people might go and what they might be seeing and what they might do. But you can spend a lot of time doing all the little spindly details. So if your aim is to write a book, and at the end of a year all you come up with is a map, you probably haven't succeeded, have you? So bear in mind the priorities, okay? So that's quite good. So writing a book with Drew and somebody was an experience. Well, so Steve was one of the guys who actually was in our is in our Nine Stupid Conscience book. There's a bunch of them still on the stream, and Alan's here as well, and Glenn, some of the people who contributed. So we had to work together to do the anthology. That was quite an interesting thing. And all those sorts of bits and pieces. Now that's a way to get started. So if you think to yourself, well, 100,000 words, that's a lot to write, and it is. That's that's about 500,000 characters. Okay, that you've actually got to physically tap into your keyboard. All right, so that's what you're talking about. 500,000 key presses is about the length of a book, ish. Okay, so that gives you, and you may be thinking that's just too much. In that case, start with something smaller. Okay. Short stories are absolutely fine. Novellas are absolutely fine. There are loads and loads of writing competitions that you can enter on Facebook and on the internet and various other places. Lots of little indie publishers will run little competitions like that. The prize may only be like 20 quid or something, but you might get your book into an anthology of other authors. Okay, and then you've started, right? All those sorts of things, which is sort of what we did for Nine Streams, is to say that okay, so you fancy writing? Let's put your money where your mouth is, guy. Let's see if you're up for it. And some people that we had on Nine Streams did fall by the wayside as we did it. Okay, so not everybody who started out on that enterprise got to the finishing line. And I'm sure some of the folks on the stream who were in there will admit it was a struggle at times. Okay, it's hard work. Writing is not just a lot of people have this idea of writing is you have this lovely cottage with a bit of countryside outside, and you just sit there. The muse is taking me today, and I'm writing my story, and I'm typing away, and isn't everything glorious? Now I shall have a cup of tea, and then I shall write another 1,000 words, and I shall have another cup of coffee and a couple of biscuits, and then maybe some lunch, and then I'll write another couple of 1,000 words. Novel will be done in 3 weeks' time, no problem at all. It isn't like that, okay? It's not like that at all. You have to sweat a little bit of blood and tears and things to get anything worthwhile done. So if you've got this lovely idea that you're going to be writing by the sea, or you're in a lovely cottage in the country somewhere overlooking a nice meadow with a typewriter, no, that's a fantasy story that you're living in there. Okay, it's not. It doesn't work like that. So writing is still hard graft, I'm afraid. You need to sit in front of a word processor and do some work. All right, it's no different from any other kind of computery work. It's work. It is work. Yeah, it can be enjoyable, but it's still work. All right. If you want to write a chunky novel, you're going to have to put some hours in, and sometimes it's going to be harder than other times. So there we go. Antilles, hello Drew, nice to catch you live. Lovely to see you. Sorry, I don't know how far behind the chat I am. So I'm scrolling down trying to catch up and making sure I don't miss any questions. Gianna, there's a question. You mentioned agents. Is that how you got picked by Fantastic Books, or was that intended with the work on Lead? No. So what happened with Fantastic Books? Now, Fantastic Books is an independent, relatively small scale publisher. Okay, they're not like one of the big name publishers like Penguin or anything like that you would have. So I suppose they're on the small end of publishing. Now I got in contact with them because I entered the competition. I just saw this write a science fiction story. I thought I can do that. I enjoy writing science fiction stories, and I bunged them a science fiction story about 2 years before the Elite thing was even a thing, and it ended up in one of their anthologies. I went, yay! I've got a short story published in an anthology. And then when the Elite Dangerous thing came round, I was already working on book 1 of Shadewood before Elite Dangerous was a thing, because I wanted to write my science fiction story. But I had to put Shadewood on hold because suddenly there was this Elite Dangerous Kickstarter, and then there was the writer's pack and all the stuff that went with it. And suddenly I was writing an Elite Dangerous novel. Okay. And so I rang up Fantastic Books and basically said, look, I've just got the opportunity to do this. Would you be interested in publishing it? And initially they were like, well, it sounds a bit weird. What's kind of this all about? But a few conversations later, and they said they were kind of up for it. And as it turned out, they ended up being kind of the publisher for many of the Elite Dangerous novels, and that's just because they ended up talking to the other people who won Kickstarter things. We became a sort of community, and it kind of went from there. So it was one of those sort of right place, right time sort of things, and sometimes those things happen and sometimes they don't. But for us, it worked out quite well. We had a publisher who got gaming, a publisher who got what we were trying to do, who could manage the weirdness of writing in the game universe and all the things that are a little bit strange about that sort of stuff, and could cope with it. Had editors on board that knew that kind of genre as well. And then we were able to present them as a box set and all the other various bits and pieces that came out as a result. So that, it worked. It was quite a nice thing. But it was accidental. I just happened to have submitted them a sci-fi story a few years before, and kind of got into the competition. I think I got third place or something. I wasn't at the top, but it was that kind of got me started. So. And for my next series of books, I may use them again, or I may do something different. You've got that choice as a writer. You can do different things depending on what your aims and objectives are. So that's quite good. So fantastic books. I knew them before Elite, but they just happened to be. It worked out in terms of connecting, if that makes sense. So Steve is famous and has a gold-plated yacht. Excellent. And Scylla says, did your events in ED help you with your novel somehow? No, it was kind of the other way around, really. So I had written, long before Elite Dangerous was a thing, I'd been a fan of Elite, back from 1984. Now, I had written some fan fiction novels about a fan version of Elite called Olite, long before Elite Dangerous was a thing. And I'd just done it because I liked Elite type stories with spaceships and Cobra Mark 3s and stuff. And I'd written some stories. Now, they were all unofficial because there was nothing official at the time at all. And that's my Olite series, which you can still find online if you go searching for them. And I wrote them because I thought it would be an easy way for me to start playing around with science fiction, because the universe already exists. Everybody knows how, the small amount of fans I was in contact with at the time knew Elite well. So I didn't have to explain what a Cobra Mark 3 was. Everybody knew what that was, and everyone knew what Witch Space was, and all those sort of things were figured out. So I could jump into there without much preamble, write a story, and boom, there you go. I didn't have to do all the world building. So it was a sort of, for me, it was an exercise in, can I write a science fiction story? I fancy writing a science fiction story. Can I actually write one? And I used it as a sort of learning experience. So basically what I did with those novels back in the mid-2000s, this would have been about 2004, 2005, I used it, the bulletin boards and the forums of the time. I basically said, hey, I'm writing an Elite story, an Elite type story. Here's chapter 1, what do you think? And then people would read it and go, yeah, it's all right, but what about this, what about that? And eventually it coalesced into a story, and it was edited up to a perspective where it was actually decent enough. But it was fan fiction. I couldn't do anything with it. So for me, it was an exercise in learning the craft, which I found quite useful. I got better at writing because of having people reading it going, yeah, it was all right, but this bit was a bit rubbish. Or would they really say that? Or the way you described this was a bit pants, all that sort of stuff. So I got a lot of critique, and I learned a lot from doing it. And that's important, is finding a safe place to learn things and try things out. So that's the ED thing. By the time Elite Dangerous turned up and there was an opportunity to write a book for Elite Dangerous, I had already written 4 kind of full-length Elite-y novels. So I was in a position where, I've got Elite nailed in terms of what I know about it. I've got my science fiction writing skills nailed because I've worked quite hard at this. So I was in a really good position at that point to go, Frontier. I know Elite really, really well. I've got a published book. I've also written some, speculative science fiction stuff. Can I write an official Elite Dangerous novel? And it kind of all lined up. So that was the right place, right time. But chance favouring the prepared mind, I suppose, if that makes sense. Glenn says, my favourite contemporary writer, quote by Neil Gaiman, write down everything that happens in the story, then in your second draft make it look like you knew what you were doing all along. That's pretty much it, actually, yeah. I find that, Tuplex says, I find that any story in my head turns out to be a bit vague and unstructured, and all I get to paper but a few sentences and I get stuck. So the trick, I think the thing there is just keep writing down the ideas. And what I find is I quite often write down small segments of ideas that work on their own but that aren't part of a collective whole, and then I find that they will join up. So maybe just develop very small sections to Plex, and then see if ultimately they add up into something a bit bigger. You may be surprised. I quite often go, oh, that scene that I wrote for that thing over there, I could use that over here. Never throw anything away. Okay, that's the other thing that's very, very important. If you write something and think, actually, that's a really good scene, but I can't use it here, don't delete it. All right, put it in a archive folder or something. I've got a file on my hard disk called the Wagar archive, which it consists of loads and loads of Word documents, which are of scenes that I've written. Gone, that's really, really cool, but I can't think where the hell to use them right now. So I must have several thousand little bits of scenes that exist in something, which aren't used anywhere else because I haven't found a place for them to exist yet. So if you get an idea, it'd be really cool if someone did this and this and this, and then you write it, maybe it's only like 500 words, don't delete it, stick it somewhere in a way that you can find it in the future. And you never know, sometimes you may go, that's exactly what I need in this particular, and that has happened to me, okay, and I've been so pleased with myself that I haven't deleted it. So that's quite good. So yeah, all that sort of thing. Pro BFC. So when you start out, Drew, how do you go about getting alpha readers? Family members are far too biased. Yeah, alpha family members generally are not the best people to review your work because they'll try and be nice. Okay, and you don't need people to try and be nice. Now, the exception to that, quite often, in my case, is my wife, who's actually a very good critical reader of my stories. And I say that in a nice way, because she's very, very good at finding plot holes. Because she analyses things quite carefully. So she's actually rather good. But in general, giving your story to your family and your friends, they don't want to hurt your feelings. Okay, they don't want to hurt your feelings. So they'll go, "Oh, it's lovely," and that doesn't help you at all. I thought it was really good. Yes, yeah, well done for writing a book. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. It was excellent. Doesn't tell you anything, okay? It doesn't tell you whether it's any good, whether it's rubbish, what you need to improve. What you need is some sort of group, maybe a bit like this one, but probably a bit more focused and less waffly, that can kind of basically help you. Okay, so what are you trying to do here? Because this bit seems to be very waffly. You need some experience in there. So some of the people who are on the 9 streams of consciousness will, I would, and they were very brave actually. I would edit some of their stuff live on the stream, okay? And that was quite an uncomfortable experience for some of them because editing is harsh, okay? I would say, okay, why are you doing this? You don't need this, okay? This character is explaining the plot. You're not allowed to do that, okay? This character's just gone, is holding up a big signpost saying, adventure over here. You're insulting your reader. You mustn't do that. And it was quite a harsh lesson for some of them in being how you have to actually write something that's actually any good. And you will not get that from your families and friends. So your alpha readers, how do you go about getting them? Okay, well, I got mine from online forums and stuff. So there are places you can go, to that sort of stuff. Writing forums, science fiction forums, all those kind of things, where you are encouraged to stick your stuff up. What you mustn't do though is mustn't be too precious, okay? Because I'm afraid the first few things you write, by any measure of decent writing quality, will not be up to snuff, okay? You've got to brace yourself for, actually, I'm not a latent genius after all. Because I can assure you, you're not. All right. Any writer who's got anywhere being any good has had to go through a baptism of fire when they've written something that they thought was awesome and it turned out to be absolutely rubbish. Okay, that's just inevitable. You're going to have to brace for that. All right. And then you'll slowly begin to pick up okay, so my point of view wasn't correct, my grammar wasn't correct, my sentence structure wasn't correct, I'm too waffly, I use too many adjectives, I use too many adverbs, my dialogue doesn't quite ring true, my sentences are too long. Okay, there's lots and lots of stuff in there that you'll have to improve on across the board to get your story to a point where it's actually quite good. But you can only learn that stuff by doing it. You've got to go through that pain, I'm afraid. There's a lot of stuff you can pick up from books, okay? There is a lot of stuff you can pick up by books. So if you get books on how to be a creative writer, there will be lots and lots of tips in there and exercises for you to try. Those things are quite good. But ultimately it comes down to, if you put it in front of a bunch of critical people and they read it, do they like it or do they think it's got promise? then that's the ultimate acid test. So if you can find, particularly now that COVID is over, if you can find a local writing group to wherever you are in the world, I would definitely recommend you join it, because those people will be a source of hopefully friendly criticism. And that's what you need. You actually do need criticism. I mean criticism in a good way. Okay, we tend to think of the word criticism as a bad thing. It's not. Criticism is the only way you will get better. All right, and I'm sure, sure in terms of music, I played this tune. What did you think? Well, your dynamics weren't there. You made some mistakes on the arpeggio. You can play that better. We need more. You need more passion in the music. All those sort of things. We can kind of appreciate that in the way that music is performed. Writing is exactly the same. Your characters are. They're too obvious. They're too cookie cutter. They're too goody baddy. They're not nuanced enough. Your descriptions are too long. So it's like, he's still describing the beautiful ocean. Come on, what happens to the story? All those things are things that you're going to potentially have to improve a lot as you write. So, so there we go. Gabriff's 07 Drew came from the YouTube channel. Love your videos. Thank you. I do have fun with the videos, actually. I'm getting better at those. I mean, that's another thing, okay? So I've started making YouTube videos on lots of different things. That's a learning curve, okay? You don't just suddenly get good at making YouTube videos. You have to learn a lot about the craft of making YouTube videos, and you get better, bit by bit. So that's quite good. Alan says sometimes he had an idea, written half a page and then got stuck, but sometimes I can take it further. Yeah, but just don't throw it away, because you might have a gem in there. Okay, I've written loads and more stories than I can count where I've started and gone, I've got no idea where this is going, and I've just petered out after a few pages. But keep it, because it might be the seed of something that you need later on. Do I live in a cottage? No, I live in a detached house in the countryside, but it's not a cottage. No, it's a relatively new building. It's about 1997, I think. So it's not quite as picturesque as I would like. I'm hoping to move to a more picturesque cottage in time, but I need to figure out how to move to said location. So I'm not quite there yet. No. Glenn says we all learn to take constructive criticism and use it to make things even better than before. Rather than feel like it's down. So it's if you need to be in a situation where you can. There's two things. One, that you can find a bunch of people who are competent enough to give you constructive criticism. That's very important. Okay, that aren't just going to slap you around and go, it's rubbish. Because you've got to avoid that. But you've also got to be personally in a place where you can let your carefully crafted thing that you've crafted be subject to that criticism and accept it. Now, there's a tendency, it's very strong in writers, because writers are basically egos covered with skin, okay? And musicians are very similar, I've found in my experience, okay? Because the thing that we have created, okay, this amazing thing that we've created is, of course, absolutely perfect. And we can put no criticism, because you just don't understand what I'm trying to do. If you criticise my wonderful creation, how dare you criticise my wonderful creation? Got to move past that, okay? the wonderful thing that you've created has the potential to be wonderful, but it isn't. All right, it just isn't. All right. You may think it is, but you've got to get past that, because it isn't. All right. So there's a wake-up call. This nobody starts out just being a wonderful, perfect writer or musician or anything else like that. You just don't. Okay. The first stuff that you write needs work, and you need other people to see beyond your blinkers and go, actually, this bit here, that bit's rubbish. You need to rewrite that, and you need to be in a position where you personally can. Go, what? Okay, I'll take that criticism. So you need to find people you can respect for their ability to provide you with criticism, and then you need to be in a personal space where your ego is not so fragile that you can't you're able to accept some criticism. Okay, now those things are quite simple to say, but they're not all that simple for many people to get. All right. It's quite tough. It's quite a hard thing to take criticism on board, all right? But you need to. You need to. It's really, really, really important. So there we go. Thank you for the follows, by the way. A few people who followed for this evening, so that's quite good. Glenn, Drew, was Dan aware that and into Elite before you approached him about publishing? I think he knew about Elite. I don't think he knew a great deal about it. I mean, but Dan was at the time primarily a sort of science fiction and fantasy publisher, so he was aware of Elite, and he certainly knew about Elite, but I don't think he was the world's biggest fan of Elite at the time. But he certainly knew about it, so yeah, there was definitely a latent amount of knowledge about the Elite universe at that point in time. So yes, and so this is I'm not a writer, but I saw a documentary on TV about Perry Rhodan stories that comes out every 2 weeks. Those writers get one-page concept to continue a story in some pages of secret law and have to somehow write a novel within 4 to 5 weeks. Wow, they don't have only one project using that sort of space. So yeah, so sometimes being under pressure to produce something can be really good. Sometimes being under pressure to produce something can be really bad. It depends on your personality. Some people respond to pressure really, really well, and others don't. Personally, I do. I find pressure actually... My dad had a favourite saying, which was, pressure makes diamonds. To which I would always quip back, well, pressure and heat makes diamonds, Dad. But you got the point. Whereas, so I find a deadline and you must have this done by this point does actually motivate me. Some people can't stand that, okay? And you need to find out what works for you. So that's quite good. Mad Monks off. Do you have to be good at English in general to write? No. Okay. Don't. For God's sake, don't get yourself into a situation where you think you have to be a academic genius to be a writer. It's complete nonsense. My highest qualification, for academically as a writer, I'm old enough to have done in the UK what we call O levels, which are the things that came before GCSEs. Now, outside the UK, that won't mean much to you, but anybody in the UK knows what a GCSE is. Before GCSEs, we had things called O levels. Okay, I have a C grade, which would be, I think, a 3 in a GCSE. English literature O level. That is the only formal qualification I have as a writer, okay? So no, you do not need to be good at English. What you do need to have is a love of reading, okay? That's much more important. You need to be able to pick up a book like, I don't know, 2001: A Space Odyssey, or Jules Verne, or Lord of the Rings, or any of those kind of things that are classics of the genre that you happen to be. You need to be able to pick up the great books of the genre that you like, and go, yeah, I love this, and I like when he does this, and I like when they do that, and I like when she does this, and all those sort of things. You need to be able to appreciate the thing that you're in. So again, it's probably very similar to music. If you want to write a jazz quartet piece, you've got to love jazz, okay? There's no point thinking I shall be a science fiction author, but you don't read any science fiction. That's just not going to work, all right? So you've got to love the genre that you love. That's what you need, okay? You do not need to have anything more than a basic working knowledge of language in order to be a writer. So grammar is useful to a degree. You need to know where to put a comma. You need to know your tenses. Writing in future past, but that's about it, really. All those past participle things and future imperfects. No, you don't need to know all that sort of stuff. You don't need to know any of the modern stuff, actually. My wife is actually a tutor for children under the age of 12, and for their tests they have to learn about all these weird and wonderful English constructions, like we used to call them magic keys. I think they're called split digraphs, and they've got all these weird and wacky funny names, and I have got no clue what they are. My wife says, no, I mean, you definitely use them because I've seen them in your books. But technically I don't know what I'm doing, but I just know it works, okay? And I'm confident in my ability to write using those sort of techniques. Ask me to describe them, I'm adrift. I don't know what they are, okay? You do not need to be an academic to be a writer. And I would say probably the best writers probably aren't academics, okay? Because they get too formulaic. and they use too many long words and too many clever structures, okay, which are off-putting if you want to be mass market acceptable. If you want just, dare I say, ordinary people to read your stuff, you don't want to write it in such a way that it's only accessible to academics who've studied at the A level. That's not it's not going to help. When you read a Drew Wagar book, you do not need an O level or an A level or a degree in advanced English literature to appreciate it. It's a good old-fashioned adventure story. So no, you do not need to be, you do not need to be an academic to write. You do need to be able to string a sentence together. So you need to know, basic stuff like adverbs, adjectives, nouns, verbs, commas, full stops, capital letters. How to put a paragraph together. Those basics, and spelling, you need to have a reasonable grasp of spelling, but computers can help a lot in that sort of stuff. So no, you don't need any formal qualifications whatsoever to be a writer. Is the bottom line there? You just need to love the written word. That will see you through. Because what you can do is you can look at Tolkien, you can look at Arthur C. Clarke, you can look at Heinlein, you can look at all your favourite authors and go, what is it about these guys that I like reading? And use that, figure out what it is, and use that, okay? And then develop your own style from that. That's how I did it. I thought, oh yeah, he's written such a really good paragraph here. That really kind of sent chills down my back. What did he do to make that happen? And then you kind of read the text again to figure out how it works. It gives you an idea of how to do it. So those things are important. But yeah, so don't get hung up on being super qualified. You don't need to be. Next question. I was bad at English since I was young. Now, I was lucky, okay? I was, Mad Bunksoft says I was bad at English. Now, I was bad at English, okay? I was absolutely rubbish at English up until about 1983, when I was just entering my sort of secondary school, okay? Now, I was lucky because I had been rubbish at English. I'd been middling grades, English, as far as I was concerned, was boring spellings and learning grammar, and had no interest in whatsoever. And I went into, and I was very lucky. I had an English teacher who was into science fiction, and he, caught me, I think, doodling probably the Starship Enterprise on one of my textbooks, and said, "Oh, you like Star Trek, do you?" And I went, "Oh, yeah," and he said, "Oh yeah, no, science fiction's all good stuff. Have you read 2001?" And at the age of 13, no, I hadn't. I hadn't even heard of it. But he gave me a copy of 2001 to read. He said, "Yeah, read that. If you like Star Trek, you'll probably like that." And I read it, and I remember thinking, it sort of kick-started my, to use the word violently, actually got me into reading in a big way. And then he gave me Jules Verne. He gave me Tolkien and all those things. I was suddenly introduced to all these amazing authors, and I thought, this is fantastic. Now I can read, and there's all these amazing stories out there. And then he did chuck into the English curriculum some creative writing bits where he said, right, I want you guys, your homework today is to write a story where we're in a magical fantasy land and some stuff happens. Go away and do that's your homework for this week. And so I was like, suddenly I was, right, it's my turn to try this. And, so I actually got an English teacher who actually encouraged my creativity. I was very lucky with that. And so I owe him a great debt of thanks, because from that seed at school, the creativity for my stories actually picked off. So, so that's important. So sometimes you can get that from school. Doesn't always happen, but that's always good as well. So there we go. Low Earth orbit. Every musician always has a folder full of random. Yeah, you see, just doodle away. Sometimes you'll come up with some really, really good stuff. Who's he calling Waffly? That's right. My aunt was a great beta reader for my space opera novel. She was die-hard Trekkie. Everything was unlikely. She pulled no punches. That's good. Yeah, that's good. Star Crusher Gaming, good evening. Thank you very much. Good to see you. Glenn says, Drew cut my first draft apart in the first online edit. But it was the best thing for me. I learned a lot. So, okay, and that's one of the things that, hopefully a slightly more experienced writer like me can pass on to you guys is these are the sort of things, don't get tripped up by them, okay? There's stuff that you do need to work on and stuff that you don't need to work on. But, pick up those kind of criticisms. Steve Shaw, editing and more editing. Yes, editing's a thing. Okay, rewriting the story again and again and again, worth it, but may turn you into a mass murderer. Editing is one of those things that when you're just about to say, no, I've had it, I'm never doing a book again, ever, that's about when you're ready. So yeah, and you do need the company of other writers who get what you're going through. Okay, so that's important, because people who don't write, in fact, an awful lot of people today. I mean, I don't know if this is being unfair, but an awful lot of people today, the vast majority of people that you interact with on a daily basis, are not actually very creative. Okay, they just don't create. They're consumers, and there's nothing wrong with that, because you need consumers, because consumers are the people who pay the bills. All right. So yeah, when you're a creative person, whether it's music or writing or art or any creative thing, okay, you need lots of consumers about. But most people don't actually quite get the creative mindset. They don't get why you suddenly start staring off into space and going, "Oh, I've just had this really, really good idea." They kind of, where are you going? What are you doing? They don't get that. They don't get that you need some isolation. They don't get that you're thinking on a different way and you're interpreting events in a different way. Creative people are very oddly wired, and you need the company of other creative types around you who get you. And when you're staring off into the distance, looking out the window, they're quite happy to leave you alone until you come back to the conversation without feeling uncomfortable. Okay. That's really, really important, okay? Because consumer type people are the people who ultimately want to pick up your story, but they don't necessarily understand the creative process. A lot of consumer type people, are quite happy to pay £5 for a coffee, but kind of think, well, $7.99 for a book, that seems quite a lot. And as a creative person, you're going, what? I spent the whole year writing that thing. You're comparing it to a coffee which took only like 5 minutes to make. What are you on? I just want to slap you around the head. But of course you don't, because you're very civilized and you're very nice. There's a real difference, okay, between the consumer way of mindset and a creative mindset. And if you're a creative person, you do need the company of other creative types who get you, okay, and understand that you've got this urge to create something which may seem to an awful lot of other people to be a complete and utter waste of time. Why would you want to do that? Why would you want to spend hours and hours and hours drawing a map of somewhere that doesn't exist? And why would you want to spend all your time writing a book when you're not going to make any money out of it? Or there's other stuff that you should be doing. What about your career, or what about this, or what about that, or there's always that is a tension that exists for creative people. But we have to create. There's something in us that will not let us rest until we have created, and out of those things, sometimes genius moments happen. Not all the time, but sometimes they do. That's a tension. So be aware of the sort of person you are, and find people who get you and can support you in that, because that's really, really important. It's quite hard to do that on your own. If you can get people into the same sort of genre, that will help as well. There's no point trying to hang around a bunch of horror authors if you're a science fiction writer, because the crossover is very limited. But there we go. Star Crusher Gaming, I was wondering about the possibility of a Law Tour 2. Yeah, well, I'm going to give some thought to subsequent Law Tours now that the Odyssey thing is coming, because we may have some more stuff we can actually do. But so yes, there may well be another Law Tour at some point in time. So we'll keep an eye on that. So, but no promises yet. No promises, no guarantees. But yes, I'd like to do another one. So that's quite good. No problem. Probs BT says thank you for this. No problem. No problem. Writers are basically egos covered in skin. I think a lot of creative people would subscribe to that if they're honest. But there we go. The thing that keeps me going is the determination that this will be the project I don't give up on. It's a very creative way of putting that across. That's quite good. If you focus too much on vocabulary, you start writing like Lovecraft. Yeah, so you can be a bit wound up in yourself. You've got to be a little bit careful. I've come across quite a few people who've written something that's a bit too epic, and they've got a cast of thousands of characters, and they spent all their time making a working language. Now, that's how Tolkien did it, and he got away with it, all right? But he's the exception rather than the rule, all right? So be careful of going to the nth degree. You don't need quite so much as that in order to write a book. You can overcook it. JR 1988. I have a history of starting and not finishing things, getting bored before the end and moving on. Yeah, so you do have to work through that one. I have the same problem. I kind of that meme with the guy and the two girls, and there's the one girl kind of grabbing his arm, giving him a kind of, what are you doing? And the other girl's just sort of sauntering off into that meme. Okay, that's kind of. A lot of writers are kind of like, existing book is the girl on the arm looking at him, reproachfully, and the other girl wandering off, who he's sort of checking out, is there? Oh, look, new exciting project, and a lot of us are like that. We've got to be careful. You've got to be disciplined. I'm afraid, JR 1988. The only solution to that is a bit of discipline. Okay, a bit of self-discipline, saying you're going to have to give yourself a stiff talking to and say, no, come on, behave yourself. Get the current project off the books before you start playing around with a new one. So there we go. Dragon Eye is reading Reclamation. Excellent. Hope you enjoy Reclamation. Thank you very much. You don't have to be a great English major. So that's that thing. Yeah, don't let anybody tell you need to be an academic to write. You don't. Okay. In fact, it's probably a good thing if you're not, I would say, if you want to write a book that appeals to people. Don't get obsessed by getting lots and lots of literary qualifications. You don't need them. Oh, fronted adverbials, there you go. So yeah, all those sort of things like fronted adverbials and all those sort of stuff, complete meaningless jargon that you never ever need. All right, so you can throw all that lot entirely in the bin. You don't need fronted adverbials or any of that other kind of silly verbiage that they teach at GCSE or kind of mainstream things. That's not what you need to be a writer. What you need for writing is passion and storytelling, okay, which is a little bit more subtle. Read More Than You Write by Stephen King. Yeah, Man vs. Pictures. That's a very, very good one. Know your tenses. Actually, if you're writing in something that's not your first language, I literally take my hat off to you because that is not an easy thing to do. Okay, I would hate to be writing in another language. That would be incredibly hard work. Tenses are a particular problem. Point of view is the one that most people get wrong first off. Okay, point of view is very, very important for a story. So when you start a scene, you've got to decide, where am I telling this? Where is the perspective I'm telling the story from? Am I telling it through the eyes of one of the people in the scene? In which case, I can only see what that person can see. Or am I doing it from a kind of omniscient narrator's perspective, where I'm sort of floating godlike above the scene and I can see everything? Or am I doing something else? What you must do is you must decide where you're going to be in the scene as the POI, the POV perspective, and you mustn't change that in the scene unless you signpost it really clearly to the player, to the reader. Okay, so all those sort of things are very important. Now, I made that classic mistake in an early draft of Reclamation. There's a scene, hopefully not spoilers for anybody who hasn't watched it. There's a scene where a spacecraft crashes. Okay, and I started off in an early draft in the POV of the pilot of the spacecraft, and the ship is vibrating and the thing's heating up and bits are falling off the ship and there's flames coming over the bow as it hits the atmosphere, all that kind of good stuff. That's fine, right? But then what I did is I did this amazing scene where the cargo in the cargo bay broke loose and smashed around the cargo bay, and it caused debris, and it ripped a hole in the side of the ship, and it started spewing debris out, and the ship starts spiraling. And my editor basically said, "This is a great scene. You can't have it." And I went, "What do you mean I can't have it?" He says, "You've written the POV from the perspective of the pilot." "Yes." "The pilot's at the front of the ship, isn't he?" "Yes." "So they can't see what's happening in the cargo bay, can they?" "Damn it." all they can experience as the pilot of the ship is the noise and the clunking and banging and crashing. You can do that. You can't describe the details of what's happening in the cargo bay because there's nobody to witness the action. POV, point of view, is really, really important in storytelling. Okay, so you have to sort of frame it in your mind like a movie, and decide where the camera is when you're writing. That's very, 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 very important. And Alan says, I find keeping a consistent POV a problem. It's hard because, you know, if you're telling the story from one character's perspective and one of the other characters wants to do something a bit shady, if the character that you're looking through the eyes of at the point in time that happens doesn't see it, you can't write it in the book. So you've got to make some interesting choices as to how you do things like that. Nim Duskrin, nonsense, you have a camera on it, but you can do it that way. So there's lots of ways to get around that sort of thing if you want to, but you have to make sure it's consistent. Okay, that's the trick. Is that you may that an editor will say, okay, so you can, okay, maybe my editor could have said you can have that scene, but it has to appear on a monitor. Okay, and you haven't. You've swapped into the cargo bay using some miraculous thing that doesn't exist. So things like that, you need to be consistent. Okay, and an editor will pull you up on things like that very, very quickly. So there we go. School was always actually horrible when it came to literature. I always enjoyed reading stories, but the way, yeah. So if you've been in education at all, actually, I think, unless you've been really, really lucky, your enthusiasm for reading and learning about how to write stories may well have been knocked out of you. Okay, everything I've seen of the education system in the UK, certainly, I don't know how it is in different countries, but certainly in the UK, everything I've seen about the GCSE curriculum as it stands today for English literature and English language utterly kills any enthusiasm that any prospective pupil might have for actually being a creative writer. If you've managed to survive GCSE English and you still want to write, then A, well done, and B, you've probably picked up enough that that's all you need to know. So, all those, like I say, all those fronted adverbials and all that kind of gobbledygook, you can chuck that in the bin. You don't need to worry about that anymore. Get your passion back, and then use the things that you picked up from those courses. Unfortunately, the vast majority of people are turned off the subjects by the experience of going through the education system. So yeah, that's a problem. I wonder how many budding authors were ruined by schooling. Quite a lot, I imagine, quite a lot. So there we are. School is more about conformity, yes, and creative people don't conform very well. I'm not a conformist, as you may have come across. So those things are a problem. Anyway, we're beginning to run out of time. Let me just scan down for any more questions. Ancillus, being able to kindle the flame or encourage youngsters. Yes, I am desperately disappointed when I find it a lot when I go into people's houses nowadays, and there just aren't any books at all in people's houses. There's a TV, of course, but there aren't any books. My wife, as I've already mentioned, does home tutoring, and in the pre-COVID days, some of the children used to come to our house to get their tutoring done. Now it's all done on Zoom, of course. But they would come in and go, "What's that?" And they'd go, and you go look at it, and what are they getting confused at? You suddenly realise it was a bookcase. And I've got quite a lot of bookcases in my house, as you're probably not surprised to know. They're just. The idea for many younger people today of picking up a book and reading it is an alien one, which is terrifying. But unfortunately, it seems to be well. Now, ebooks have helped, okay, and being able to access things online, and audiobooks are another great way to get across to a slightly different demographic. So you certainly can't write them off in that sort of sense, because the people love stories still. They just consume them in slightly different ways, I think. But it has changed with different generations of things. I still like to pick up a old-fashioned book that's made of paper. I find digital things a little less intimate, I suppose is the right word. But an awful lot of people go, I don't paper. It's so last century, and I get that as well. So I will be making sure that I make all of my stories available on ebook, so any electronic device can read them. Paperback, because old people like me like books. But also audio, because an awful lot of people are in time-pressured environments where they can't read a book, or the actual physical activity of reading a book is they haven't got time for because of the way life is. And so an audio book is another way to consume the story. And the idea at the end of the day is it's the story that counts, not the format, not the medium through which it's going through. So the story is everything, from my perspective anyway. Science fiction is often ignored by serious educators. That is very, very true. There's a lot of sniffiness about science fiction because they just assume it's all Star Wars and pew pew, and it simply isn't. They're just a position of ignorance. Science fiction at its best is incredibly enlightening and incredibly thought-provoking stuff. So so that's definitely a thing. And Nim does screen space because put the camera on the dashboard, then you can see what's going on the cargo bay. That's a very good point. Yeah. So educational school literature in Germany sucks. Okay. DJ Scooby says, I've always loved writing stories. When I was at school, my teacher said they loved my imagination, but my English and spelling was dribble. Yeah, but you see, that can be fixed by a good editor or by a computer nowadays. So don't let a perceived quality, gateway constrict what you think you can achieve, because the story is the thing. Can you get across the story? That's the important bit. Education in general sucks in most countries. The problem is education as a mass-produced thing is just a common denominator, and none of us are anywhere near the common denominator. That's the problem with that. The curriculum is designed to shut down creativity. I think you're probably right. It certainly doesn't allow a great deal of free thinking or critical thinking. I try and pose questions to my sons about that, and they say, well, what about this and what about that? And I say, well, what do you think? And they hate me asking that question because they want to get to whatever the right answer is. But of course I said, no, actually the process of thinking about it is actually more important than getting to the right answer, because there may not be a right answer, and usually there isn't a right answer. Drew walks into somebody's home, no books. Oh, Drew, what do you do for work? I know, so I mean, I understand the practicalities about owning books because they take up space, and they're quite heavy actually, and that's and there is an eco-friendly aspect to it nowadays, which I but fully respect. Digital stuff is much easier to transport and manage, and I like I could read an ebook. That doesn't bother me too much, but particularly if sometimes it's a more complicated book. The difficulty I find with ebooks is I can't flip back a couple of chapters and just check something, because there's no easy way to flip back quickly like a physical book. It's physical books has excellent random access, whereas the ebooks don't. But there we go. Lots of good books. Ian M. Banks, Peter Hamilton, Asimov, Heinlein, Le Guin. Awesome, some excellent authors being mentioned in the chat there. That's really, really good. So I mean, low Earth orbit. That's a very good point. Actually, one of the things that has got better recently is that the film and TV adaptions of fantasy and sci-fi have, because the special effects are now believable, as opposed to a few years ago when they were kind of like quite cheesy. They are quite compelling, and I suppose the average educational level of the people watching them has improved. In the past, you couldn't have shown anything like The Expanse quite so easily, because you needed a little bit more knowledge about how space works in order for something like The Expanse to be accessible. And the plots have got more complicated. We're much more used to now multi-layered plots and slightly more complex political intrigues and things like that. In some of the mainstream stuff. So that has changed. A lot of that follows fashion, of course. But we did have films like 2001: The Space Odyssey back in the 70s and the 60s, which showed a realistic view of space as well. So it's not quite true to say that realism comes and goes. we got very used to not realism with things like Star Trek and Star Wars, of course. So that sets a tone for these sort of things, which is quite good. So it's a complicated thing. It's a complicated thing. So there we go. Books are ebooks are easy to take on holiday. Yes, they are. That's very, very good. So that's good. Right. So I think I've almost caught up. There we are. Blake 7. the lack of CGI budget on Blake 7. So one final point, just to sort of wrapping up. Don't compare yourself to another author. Okay, and it's quite all right for you to go, actually, this author that everybody raves about, it's not doing anything for me. Now, I really like Tolkien, but I get that some people don't. I think Asimov's books are quite good, but I wouldn't say they were brilliant. I just don't. Okay, I think they're okay. Other authors for me who, I like some of Neil Gaiman's stuff, but I wouldn't say I universally like Neil Gaiman's stuff. One author who I find very overrated personally was Terry Pratchett. I mean, Terry Pratchett seems to be beyond criticism, and partly, the poor chap has died recently. But in some circles, to even consider that Terry Pratchett wasn't a literary god is kind of it's kind of sacrosanct. It's like, and I think some of his stuff I thought was genuinely quite funny, but some of his stuff I went, no, not getting this at all. And I think that's okay. We're entitled to our opinions, and I'm sure people say the same about my stuff. With that Drew Wagar, he's just a load of rubbish. Drew stomping on graves, blasphemy, heresy, so all that sort of stuff. You're entitled to your opinion. If you don't, in the realm of music, I'm not particularly enamored of the Beatles. I like a few of their songs, but I don't get the adulation, and they're like, well, they broke new ground and all this sort of stuff. No, they didn't. They pinched all sort of stuff from classical music. There's this sort of like, you're in the presence of some sort of holiness. You're not. Okay, they're just people who just did some stuff, and sometimes they got really, really famous. I've got lots and lots of other bands that I would rate way above the Beatles. Personally, that's my opinion. Okay, and that I can support it as far as I'm concerned. For me, so if you have an opinion and you like a certain thing, okay, and you don't like another certain thing, that's okay. All right, you are entitled to your view at what works for you. I like particular types of story, and I don't like some other. I don't like the horror genre at all. It just doesn't. I don't get it. I don't like it. I'm not really into crime, mystery, thriller type things either. I don't really get those. I like science fiction and fantasy, and I like sub-genres within those particularly. So I'm more in favour of space operas and hard science fiction than I am the sort of speculative kind of ethereal sort of stuff. I like high fantasy. I'm not so bothered about kind of low fantasy and the sort of I didn't mind the Harry Potter stuff, but I thought it was very derivative. Not really my sort of thing. So quite enjoyed it, but it wasn't something I would go completely mad over. But that's me. Okay, that's my view of the world. Now you're entitled to your own view. The Beatles wrote a few good tunes, but they're no Depeche Mode. Exactly, To be honest, I would have an awful lot of 80s music over the Beatles that were in a heartbeat. Maybe that's because I just grew up in the 80s, but it does come down to personal preference, and that's okay. All right, it's okay to not go with just because everybody else is apparently saying it's the best thing of sliced bread. Make up your own mind. If you don't agree, then don't agree. That's fine. It's not a problem. And then when you come to write the stuff. And the best piece of writing advice I've ever been given, I'll leave it here at the end of this stream. Write the book you would like to read. Okay, because you may think, actually, I quite like Tolkien, but he's a bit, he takes a long time to get anywhere. I quite like Asimov, but his characterization is rubbish. I like Tolkien, but he's always going off singing with the elves too much. I don't like that. I like Clarke, but again, his characterization is a bit dry. I like Lee Gwyn, but she majors on description too long. I like Anne McCaffrey, but it's all about the characters, nothing actually happens. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take all of those things and I am going to write the novel, okay? And that's my approach. I write the story that I would like to read. And if some of you happen to go, yep, that's a good story as well, fab, okay? It works for all of us. So write the story that you want to write, okay? What's the book you would think, actually, I want a bit of Star Wars, I want a bit of Star Trek, I want a bit of Blake Seven, I want a bit of this, and I want a bit of The Expanse, and I want to mix it all up and turn it into my thing. You go write that, okay? Because that will be awesome, and you'll enjoy writing it. And at the end of the day, you'll have something that other people will want to write as well, and want to enjoy and want to read. So that's the best thing to do, all right? Write the book you want to read. Right, my friends, I must go. It is now 10 o'clock, so I hope that's kind of been at least a little bit useful. I hope I'm not just sort of sitting here preaching great wisdom to the masses. I don't have all the answers, you know. I'm just another creative person struggling to figure out what word to write next. So, you know, by no means am I an expert, but what I have covered in the stream and previous stuff is basically keep going, write the book you want to read. It is hard work. Don't expect it not to be hard work. Find people who get what you're trying to do and will support you in doing it, give you constructive criticism that's useful to you in a nice way, and just keep plodding away at it. Okay, just keep plodding away at it. If you want to write a book, that desire is never going to leave you, and you're going to have to scratch that itch somehow, somewhere along the way. Okay, just there's never a good it's like anything else. There's never a good time to do a thing, right? There's never a good time to have kids. There's never a good time to buy a house. There's never a good time to do these things. There's never a good time to write a book. You just got to go, I'm going to do it. Go do it. All right. Anyway, take it easy, my friends. Be good. I will see you back on Thursday. I'm not sure whether or not there'll be a new Elite Dangerous thing on Thursday for us to muck around with, but hopefully there will be. We'll have some fun anyway. Hopefully it's not just a spinny whirly thing. But we'll be back. And say, if you want more sort of waffly stuff and we could, topics for suggestion, we'll definitely do 9 Streams of Consciousness next week, so you can learn a little bit more about that mad escapade. But this stream on Mondays is really all about the whole process of writing. So sometimes we might dive down to the specifics. Sometimes it'll be a free-for-all session, and it's just about I would like as an author myself, I'd like to get as many other people who just would like to get started. So that's my sort of ambition with this stream. So hopefully that's useful to folks and you've enjoyed the ride. So because it's a wonderful thing, the feeling that you get when you get a book in your hands and you turn it around and it's got your name on it and you've written it and it's a book and it's a thing. That is a lovely feeling. All right, and I'd love for you to all experience that feeling for yourselves, because it's quite a thing. Okay, it's quite a thing. So anyway, I will leave you. I will leave you there. We're back next Monday. This stream is a regular Monday thing. I'm a what they call apparently a variety streamer. Okay, I need to get this right. So I have 3 topics. So it's science fiction, fantasy, writing stuff on Mondays, in terms of a creative thing. Thursdays I play this computer game called Elite Dangerous currently, and on Saturday I play some retro games from my youth. So it's all blocky pixels and old school sound effects. But we all our streams are very accessible, so sort of family friendly level streams. It's lovely to have the company in the chat, and we generally just muck about and don't take things too seriously. So it's all fun, light-hearted stuff. So if that floats your boat. Then welcome to my streams. That's what I do. So take care, my friends. Thank you for the follows. Thank you for the new folks. Really appreciate all the follows, of course. I am not a very sophisticated streamer, as you can see. I have a chat window and I have a camera, and I do have a funky. I've got a green screen. I've got that bit working, but I don't have any of these sort of jangly banners and things because I don't know how to do them. But there we go. Loef says, where can I message you? Find me on Twitter or Facebook, or my website is drewwagar.com. There's a contact page on there if you want to get in contact with me direct. I do try and answer all the emails I get. So drewwagar.com. I'll stick it in the chat. There is a contact page on my website that you can hopefully find. That will come through to me. So all the best. Look forward to seeing that. That'd be really, really cool. So take care and keep writing. Okay. That's my message for you today. always keep writing. Never let that passion die away, no matter what the world chucks at you. All right, because we need more books, we need more stories. Keep it going. Yes, and I'll continue floating in space. I do like green screens. Green screens they're just cool. Take care, my friends. I'm back on Thursday for Elite Dangerous, back on Saturday for some retro games, and then back on Monday for more of this. See you soon. Take care, my friends. Have a good one.